The metal door slammed shut behind Hope Doyle with a deafening clang. The corridor of the Red Lodge Correctional Facility for Women greeted her with the pungent smell of disinfectant and the dim light of fluorescent bulbs. The guard, a woman with a hard stare and square shoulders, pushed her forward. "Cell 217, your new home for the next 7 years, Doyle." 7 years. 2,555 days. Hope swallowed the lump in her throat. Just one evening had turned her life into a shambles. One evening that might not have happened if Lamont had met her after a late shift like he'd promised. She still remembered every second of that night. Calling her husband, who'd dropped the call. Trying to hail a cab when the phone was already dead. The decision to take a shortcut through an old abandoned park with unfinished structures where hardly anyone walked. Footsteps behind me. The sudden grip on my shoulder. The turning around. The smell of cheap whiskey and heavy breathing. The acute realization that no one was coming to help. "What's your hurry, pretty lady?" His voice, husky and wet, still echoed in her ears. Then there was a horror that lasted for an eternity. For an hour she was at the mercy of this animal that had found a hiding place among the unfinished buildings. He gagged her so she wouldn't scream. Again and again he raped her, humiliated her, whispered abominations in her ear. And all she could do was endure, waiting for it to end, praying to survive. When he finally let her go, getting up and buttoning her pants, she fumbled for the brick beside her. Without thinking, in one motion, putting all her pain and rage into it, Hope struck the man on the temple. He fell without making a sound. Only then, when she realized he wasn't breathing, came the fear. "This way, new girl," the guard's voice brought Hope back to reality. "This isn't a resort. Come on." The cell turned out to be surprisingly acceptable. 2 narrow but normal beds with thin mattresses instead of the expected bunks, 2 bedside tables, a small table against the wall. In the corner behind a low partition there was a toilet and a shower head. On one of the beds sat a thin woman with short-cropped dark hair and shrewd eyes. She gave Hope an appraising look from head to toe. "Tanya Muniz," she introduced herself after the guard had left. "What are you in for?" "Manslaughter," Hope replied, putting her meager belongings on the empty bunk. "In excess of self-defense." Tanya whistled. 7 years, huh? You couldn't tell. So was she really defending herself, or did she really want to kill someone? Hope tensed up. "I'm not a killer." "Hey, relax. Half the people here don't think they're guilty." Tanya moved over to make room beside her. "Sit down, tell your story. You and I have been stuck in this hole for a long time. It's better to know who you're dealing with." To her surprise, Hope told everything. About the assault, about the violence, about hitting the rapist with a brick when he finally let her go. About the trial, about the prosecutor who painted her as a violent woman who deliberately took a dangerous route to provoke the situation. "The jury didn't believe me," she finished. "They thought I could have run away or called for help. That I responded with excessive force, hitting him when he was already done and about to leave." "Shitty system," Tanya nodded. "You're okay, I can see that. You stick with me, I'll teach you how to survive in this zoo. The first rule is never show weakness. Second, make the right friends. I'm your right friend now, okay?" Over the next few days, Hope learned more about prison rules, written and unwritten, than she'd ever wanted to know in her entire life. Tanya proved to be an experienced mentor. She showed her which guards took bribes, which inmates were dangerous, and which ones she could deal with. She taught me how to cope with everyday difficulties, how to barter for things I needed, and how to avoid trouble. "You should always have something for protection," Tanya said one evening, her voice lowering. "It could come in handy at any time." "What do you mean?" Hope asked, even though she already had an idea. Tanya pulled out a sharpened plastic toothbrush from under the mattress. "You never know when a friend with a sharp end will come in handy," she grinned, seeing the shock on Hope's face. "Don't make that face. I'm not saying you have to cut someone. But the mere feeling of protection already helps you sleep better." Lamont's first visit was 2 weeks after her arrival. Hope was nervous as she prepared for the meeting. She hadn't seen her husband since the sentencing, when he sat in the courtroom with his head down, avoiding her gaze. The visiting room was a long hall divided into 2 parts by a glass partition. Prisoners sat on one side, visitors on the other. Conversation took place through telephone handsets, and each couple was separated by small partitions that gave the illusion of privacy. Lamont looked drained. Dark circles under his eyes, unshaven chin, wrinkled shirt, not like the neat man she'd married 4 years ago. "How are you?" he asked, pressing the receiver to her ear. "How can I be?" Hope answered quietly. "I'm in jail, Lamont." He lowered his eyes. "I know, I'm sorry." "You're sorry?" She couldn't contain her bitterness. "If you'd met me that night, like you promised, none of this would have happened." Lamont shuddered. "I know, Hope. I think about it every day, every night." "Where have you been?" A question she'd asked more than once, before and after the trial. "Why didn't you pick up the phone?" "I told you before, my car broke down." He wouldn't look her in the eye. "I tried to fix it. My phone was dead." Same story, same lame excuses. But now, looking at his jerky movements and running gaze, she could feel it. He was lying. He always did. "How's the house?" Hope changed the subject. "Are you watering my plants?" "Yes, of course." He was relieved to have a safe topic. "It's okay. Your mom's coming over to help clean up." That was news. "Mom? She hasn't been around much in the past." "Well, that's all changed now." Lamont shrugged. "She's worried about you. For both of us." The conversation dragged awkwardly, punctuated by long pauses. Lamont talked about his work at the machine shop, about his neighbors, asked about the prison routine, superficial topics, safe questions. The wall between them was thicker than the glass of the visiting room. When time ran out, Lamont promised to come back in a week, but he didn't show up until a month later with another lame apology about overtime. This time he seemed even more distant, as if his thoughts were somewhere far away. "What's going on with you?" Hope asked bluntly. "Nothing," he tried to smile. "Just tired, a lot of work." "You're getting distant," she said. "I can feel it." "No, not at all." Lamont shook his head, but avoided a direct look. "It's just hard to accept. 7 years is a long time." "You think it's easy for me?" The bitterness was rising in her again in waves. "I'm here every day, Lamont, every minute. I know." He looked guilty and something else. Fear, shame. "I'm trying, really." On their third meeting, Hope asked about her mother. "How's Shavonda?" She talked about a visit, but she hasn't shown up yet. Lamont visibly tensed. "She's busy, working 2 jobs right now. But she finds time to come to our house?" Hope watched her husband's reaction carefully. "Sometimes." He shrugged with feigned nonchalance. "I told you, he helps with the cleaning, cooks sometimes." "Cooks?" Hope raised an eyebrow. "Since when does my mother cook for you?" "Just helping, Hope." He sounded annoyed. "What's the big deal?" Something wasn't adding up. Shavonda Pierce had never been a model of maternal care. Their relationship had always been cool, especially after Hope had married Lamont, whom Shavonda considered not ambitious enough for her daughter, and suddenly she was so concerned about her son-in-law. The day after Lamont's visit, Shavonda came in. She looked better than Hope remembered. New hair, light makeup, dressed more decently than usual. "You look good, Mom," Hope said. "Thanks, honey." Shavonda fixed her hair. "I thought I'd do a little self-care. Life doesn't stop, you know." Hope caught something of a rebuke in her words. "I'm glad you took the time to come," she said. "Lamont says you're often at our house." Shavonda froze for a moment, then shrugged. "Someone has to keep things in order. The boy's got the place all messed up." "The boy?" Hope interjected. "He's 32 years old, Mom." "You're both kids to me," Shavonda said. "And you've both done stupid things. You with your self-defense, he with his—" She paused. "His what?" Hope stepped forward. "Nothing." Shavonda looked away. "It's just that he can't do it alone. Someone has to take care of him." Throughout the conversation, Shavonda acted strangely. She talked about work, neighbors, even some distant relatives. Everything but Lamont. And when Hope tried to return to the subject of her husband, her mother deftly changed the direction of the conversation. But the strangest thing of all was the way Shavonda defended Lamont when Hope did express her resentment about that night. "You mustn't blame him," Shavonda said with sudden fervor. "He couldn't have known this would happen." "He promised to meet me," Hope countered. He knew I was coming back late, that the neighborhood wasn't safe. Everyone has circumstances. Shavonda avoided looking her in the eye. You can't blame him for some psycho attacking you. It was so unlike her mother, who always criticized Lamont every chance she got. Something had definitely changed. Back in her cell after the visit, Hope told Tanya about her mother and husband's strange behavior. Maybe I'm imagining things, she finished, but something's not right here. Tanya, stretched out on her bunk, only hummed. Trust your intuition. 99 times out of 100, if you feel a catch, it's there. But what? Hope paced the small space between the beds. What could have changed them both like that? Are you serious? Tanya raised herself up on an elbow, looking at her in disbelief. I thought you were smarter than that. What do you mean? About the most obvious reason why a man and a woman might start acting strangely. Tanya shook her head. Think about it. Hope froze half a step. The thought that flashed through her mind was so wild, so impossible that she laughed. Are you kidding? My mother and Lamont? That's absurd. Why? Tanya shrugged her shoulders. Your mother is a single woman. Your husband is a single man. You are far away and for a long time. It's a story as old as the world. No. Hope shook her head. They couldn't stand each other. Mom always thought he wasn't worthy of me. And now suddenly she's cooking for him and defending him to you, Tanya reminded her. It's the little things that give people away. It's crazy, but the worm of doubt was already starting to gnaw at my insides. My mother never... All mothers do something never, until one day they do exactly that. Tanya leaned back on the pillow again. I'm not saying it's exactly like that, but you should take a closer look, and maybe look for proof. Hope couldn't sleep for a long time that night. She remembered Lamont and Shavonda's behavior, their nervousness, their evasive answers. She thought back to that fateful evening when her husband hadn't shown up to meet her and then hadn't picked up the phone. What if his car hadn't broken down? What if he was with her mother while she was being abused in a dark abandoned park? The thought was so painful it took her breath away. But now that the idea was out there, Hope couldn't shake it off. And the more she thought about it, the more likely the possibility seemed. 3 months had passed since Hope's incarceration. The prison routine had slowly but surely sucked her in, turning her days into an indistinguishable gray mass. Up at 6 in the morning, breakfast at 7, work in the laundry, lunch, an hour's walk, dinner, bedtime. Only the thoughts of betrayal of her husband and mother did not let her finally dissolve into this monotonous existence. After her conversation with Tanya, Hope couldn't stop thinking about the possible connection between Lamont and Shavonda. The thought seemed wild, unbelievable, but something inside her told her that Tanya was right. Too many things were beginning to add up. On Thursday, a letter arrived. The envelope was written in unfamiliar handwriting, and the return address belonged to Beatrice Kingsley, an elderly woman who lived in the same neighborhood as Hope's mother. They didn't know each other personally, but Beatrice introduced herself in the letter as Shavonda's longtime neighbor. Dear Hope, Beatrice wrote, we have not met, but I have known your mother for many years, living 3 houses down from her. I have heard of your misfortune, and have long doubted whether I should write, but my conscience will not allow me to keep silent. The night of the incident, I saw your husband's car outside your mother's house. He parked there around 9 o'clock in the evening, and the lights in the house went out by about 11. I noticed it because I was walking my dog before going to bed as usual. The car stayed there all night. I saw it again when I went out to get the morning paper. I'm sorry if this hurts you, but I thought you should know. Take care of yourself. Beatrice Kingsley. Hope reread the letter 3 times, each time hoping the words had changed, that she had misunderstood. But the meaning remained clear and merciless. Lamont had been at Shavonda's the very night he was supposed to meet her. While she'd been fighting for her life in a dark alley, he'd been with her mother. Bad news? Tanya asked, noticing Hope clutching the letter so tightly her knuckles turned white. You were right, Hope replied quietly. My mother's neighbor saw Lamont's car outside her house the very night I was attacked. Tanya nodded, without surprise or triumph. So instead of meeting me, he was with my mother. Hope shook her head, feeling a cold emptiness growing inside. I've been behind bars all this time and People are shit, Tanya said simply. The sooner you accept that, the easier it'll be. I need to know for sure. Hope folded the letter and hid it under the mattress. April should know more. April Foster had been Hope's best friend since college, the only person besides Lamont who visited her regularly in prison. The next day, Hope exercised her weekly right to make a phone call. With trembling fingers, she dialed April's number, praying she was home. On the third ring, her friend picked up. April? It's Hope. She tried to speak calmly, but her voice was trembling. Hope, how are you? I was going to visit you this weekend. April's voice sounded strained, as if she were trying to sound more cheerful than she really was. I need to ask you something. Hope took a deep breath. Have you seen Lamont lately? The pause on the other end of the line lasted too long. April? Yeah, I've met him a couple times, her friend finally answered. In town. Was he alone? Pause again. Hope, I don't want to get involved in a... Please, April. Hope gripped the phone tighter. I need to know. A heavy sigh. No, not alone. He was with your mom. At the cafe on Maple Street. Another sigh. And Donna saw them at the movies. In his car. I'm sorry, Hope. I didn't mean to tell you. Silence. Hope could feel the blood draining from her face. How long ago? I don't know exactly. Maybe 6 months? April spoke softly, as if she was afraid of being overheard. People started seeing them together about a month before the accident. 6 months. So it started before she was arrested. While she was working overtime trying to save up for a new car, Lamont was having fun with her mother. Why didn't you tell me before? I wasn't sure. April's voice trembled. And I didn't want to hurt you. You've been through so much already. Suddenly, the time for the call ran out and the connection dropped. Hope slowly hung up the phone, feeling stunned. She stood by the phone, unable to move from her spot until the guard told her to go back to her cell. Tanya was waiting for her, sitting on her bunk. One look at Hope's face told her everything she needed to know. Had it been confirmed? Hope nodded. 6 months. They've been dating for 6 damn months. What are you going to do? I don't know. Hope sank down on her bunk. What can I do from here? Shavanda's visit was scheduled for the following Tuesday. All these days, Hope had been walking around in a fog, going over memories in her head, looking for signs she should have noticed sooner. Lamont's strange excuses when he couldn't get home on time, his sudden business trips on weekends. The way Shavanda had quickly stopped criticizing her son-in-law, even though she'd never missed an opportunity to go after him before. When Hope had seen her mother through the glass of the visiting room, she'd barely restrained herself from screaming. Shavanda was dressed better than usual, her hair styled, her makeup fresh. She looked younger, happier, an irony that didn't escape Hope. Hello, sweetheart, Shavanda smiled, picking up the phone. You're looking good. Don't I? Hope replied coldly. You look radiant, Mom. New man in your life? Shavanda flinched, a smile frozen on her face. What do you mean? I know everything. Hope leaned closer to the glass. About you and Lamont. Shavanda's face changed, the smile gone, her eyes widening. I don't know what you mean. Don't lie to me. Hope's voice was ringing with steel. Beatrice Kingsley saw his car outside your house the night I was attacked. April and the others saw you together. The whole town knows. Shavanda turned pale, then red. She opened her mouth to say something, closed it, opened it again. It's not what you think, she finally squeezed out. What am I supposed to think? Hope could barely contain the tremor in her voice. That my mother and my husband are just friends? That he regularly sleeps over at your place because you're discussing the weather? It's an accident. Shavanda averted her gaze. We didn't plan it. An accident? Hope laughed bitterly. You accidentally slept with your daughter's husband. Did he accidentally not come to meet me because he was too busy with you? You don't understand, Shavanda suddenly went on the offensive. You've always been selfish, thinking only of yourself. I'm selfish. Hope felt the blood rush to her face. I'm in jail, Mom, because of him. If he'd met me that night, none of this would have happened. It wasn't his fault you were attacked, Shavanda said stubbornly. No, it's his fault for not being where he said he would be. Hope looked at her mother with growing disgust. How long has this been going on? Shavonda remained silent with her lips pressed together. How long, Mom? Almost a year, Shavonda finally said quietly without raising her eyes. A year. Even longer than April had realized. Hope felt a physical pain, as if someone had punched her in the solar plexus. Why? Was all she could ask. Why him? Why my husband? It just happened, Shavonda shrugged. He stopped by to fix my sink. We got to talking, had a drink. She stopped talking. I'm not proud of it, Hope, but you were so busy with your work, your ambition. He felt alone. And you decided to comfort him. Hope shook her head. My own mother. I'm human too. Shavonda's voice was a strange mixture of defense and challenge. I have needs too. Get out, Hope said quietly. Just go away, I don't want to see you. Hope, listen. Get out. Shavonda flinched at the shout, hesitated, then hung up the phone and stood up. For a second, their eyes met through the glass. Then Shavonda turned away and headed for the exit, slouching but not looking truly remorseful. Hope returned to her cell in a daze. Tanya watched in silence as she mechanically folded her clothes, brushed her hair, and lay back on the bunk, staring at the ceiling. You talked to her. It wasn't a question. Yes. Hope didn't even turn her head. She confirmed everything. They've been together for a year. Tanya whistled. What a bitch. Both of them. Hope turned to her neighbor. It was like something inside of me snapped. I never thought I could hate like that. Tanya stared at her in silence for a while, then suddenly sat down on the edge of Hope's bunk. Do you know why I'm here? She asked quietly, looking back at the cell door. I killed my husband. Hope rose up on her elbow, showing real interest in something for the first time in days. Why? For 6 years he beat me, Tanya answered in a steady voice. Every week, every damn month. First there were apologies, flowers, promises. Then he stopped even pretending to be sorry. She spoke calmly, like she was talking about the weather. For the last 2 years he raped me regularly, used objects, invited friends over to watch. Hope looked at her wide-eyed. I tried to leave 3 times, Tanya continued. The first time he found me and broke my arm. The second time he broke my ribs and nose. The third time he promised that if I tried again, he would kill my mother. She paused. One night he got drunker than usual and passed out. I took a kitchen knife and slit his throat, from ear to ear. And then I sat there and watched him bleed to death. And you got 25 years? Hope asked quietly. I didn't have the money for a good lawyer. Tanya shrugged. The prosecutor made me look like a cold-blooded killer who'd been planning the crime for years. I wish I'd killed him sooner. She let her emotions show in her voice for the first time. Every day, every night. I wish I had done it the first time he raised his hand against me. They sat in silence. Hope didn't know what to say. You know what the weirdest thing is? Tanya spoke again. The moment I watched the life drain out of him, I felt a peace, a relief that I hadn't felt in years. It was the only truly free moment I've had in years. She looked up at Hope. I have no regrets, you know. Even knowing I'll spend most of my life here, I don't regret anything. He deserved it, just like your husband and your mother deserve payback for what they did to you. Why are you telling me this? Hope asked. Because I see in your eyes what I saw in mine, Tanya replied simply. That moment when you realize that some betrayals are unforgivable, that there is a line after which there is only retribution or eternal emptiness inside. Do you think I'm capable of murder? I think they've already killed a part of you. Tanya stood up. And I think you have the right to decide who lives and who dies after what they did. The next week, Lamont came in. Hope hadn't seen him in almost 2 months. He'd canceled visits, citing work. Now she knew the real reason. He looked worse than usual, slumped, with circles under his eyes, nervous. He hesitated to pick up the phone for a long time when he sat down across from her. Hi, he finally said without looking up. Hi, Hope replied, watching him. It's been a while. Yeah, I've been busy. With my mother? Hope asked bluntly. Lamont flinched so violently that he dropped the receiver. Picking it up with a trembling hand, he spoke. Hope, listen, I can't live a lie anymore. I have to tell you that you and my mother have been sleeping together for a year? Hope interrupted him. That you were with her the night you were supposed to meet me? That you're the reason I'm here? I didn't know this would happen. He finally raised his eyes full of tears. I never wanted you to get hurt. But I was hurt, Lamont. Hope spoke softly, surprised at her own calmness. I'm in prison for 7 years because you chose to fuck my mother instead of keeping your promise. He flinched at her words. It wasn't just sex, Hope. We have real feelings. That admission hit harder than she'd expected. Not just a fling, not a moment of weakness, real feelings. When were you gonna tell me? After I was released? Or were you planning to keep seeing her, visiting me for appearances? I don't know. He looked completely lost. I'm confused. I'm sorry. You're sorry. Hope shook her head. You know what the funny thing is? I always thought you were a better man than my father, that you'd never betray me like he betrayed her. Hope, please. Get out. She looked at him with empty eyes. And don't come back. I wanted to file for divorce, he blurted out. I should have told you, but I was afraid to... Great. Hope smiled a terrible smile. Serve it. I don't care. It was a lie. She cared. Something inside her had finally broken. The last fragile shard of hope that this was all a mistake, a misunderstanding, that their lives could somehow be saved. As Lamont walked away, looking over his shoulder with a guilty expression on his face, Hope knew she would never be the same again. Something had changed in her, turned over, turned to ice. That same evening, she stole a tablespoon from the dining room. It wasn't hard, just hidden in her sleeve while carrying the tray. Tanya nodded approvingly when she saw the loot. Stainless steel, she appraised. Good choice. Now we had to find a place to work. A place was found behind the shower partition in their cell. Each night, when the lights went out, Hope took out a spoon and methodically sharpened it against the concrete floor, where the cement was particularly rough. Hour after hour, night after night, she ground the metal, shaping it, sharpening the edge. Patience, Tanya advised. Take your time. The main thing is sharpness and strength. The work calmed Hope, gave her purpose. While the spoon was gradually turning into a dangerous weapon, a plan was forming in her head, vague, blurred, but with each passing day gaining more and more clarity. One day, as Hope was returning from her work in the laundry room, she was stopped by guard Daryl Sumner, a young man with a good-natured face, one of the few who treated the prisoners without the usual contempt. "Doyle, are you all right?" he asked, leading her away from the mainstream of women. "You don't look so good lately." "I'm fine," she answered automatically. "Are you sure?" He lowered his voice. "It's just that I hear you're having trouble with your husband." Hope tensed. "What do you mean?" "I saw him with your mother in town," Daryl said awkwardly. "They looked close. I'm sorry if I'm prying, but I just thought you should know." "I know." Hope grinned bitterly. "The whole town seems to know." "Shit," Daryl shook his head. "If you need something, within the rules, of course." "Thank you." She felt grateful to another person for the first time in a long time. "I'll be fine. Don't do anything stupid, Doyle," he said seriously. "You're not like most of the people here. You have a chance to get out of here and start a new life." If he only knew what she thought about every night, sharpening her spoon. "Hope," Tanya said that evening when they were alone in the cell. "I can help you get proof." "What kind of evidence?" Hope asked tiredly. "I already know everything." "Photographs," Tanya explained. "I have connections on the outside. People who can follow your hubby and mom take some pictures, just to be sure." Hope looked up. "Why?" "I'm sure enough." "For your own sake." Tanya leaned closer. "When the time comes to act, you mustn't hesitate for a second. No hesitation, no thoughts of, what if I'm wrong? Do you understand?" Hope nodded slowly. She understood. "How can you make this work?" "Leave it to me," Tanya smiled enigmatically. "I've learned a lot in 15 years here, including how to get information from the will." The next day, Tanya had a long whisper with one of the prisoners in the laundry room, then handed her the note. A week later, the same woman discreetly slipped Tanya a small package during lunch. In the evening, when they returned to their cell, Tanya took 3 photographs out of the package. "Here," she held them out to Hope. "Now you have everything you need." Hope stared at the pictures, feeling her fingers go numb. The first showed Lamont and Shavonda sitting in a cafe, holding hands across the table. The second showed them kissing in front of Lamont's car. The third showed them entering Shavonda's house, his arm around her waist in a possessive gesture. "Are you sure now?" Tanya asked quietly. "Yes." Hope folded the photographs neatly and hid them along with Beatrice's letter. "Now I'm absolutely sure." She pulled out her shiv, now almost finished, with a sharp point and a comfortable handle wrapped in a strip of cloth. The metal gleamed dimly in the lamplight. "What's next?" Hope asked, not taking her eyes off the weapon. "Now," Tanya put a hand on her shoulder, "we plan the visit." A month had passed since the day Hope had received the photographs confirming Lamont's affair with her mother. A whole month, every night of which she'd methodically sharpened her spoon, turning it into a deadly weapon. The photos burned Hope's hands like they were red hot. Every time she looked at them, a cold rage built up inside. The pictures obtained by Tanya's connections left no doubt. The first showed Lamont and Shavonda holding hands in a cafe, looking at each other with a tenderness that couldn't be faked. The second showed them kissing outside his car, not a fleeting kiss, but the passionate embrace of 2 lovers. On the third, they entered Shavonda's house, his arm possessively around her waist. "They're not even hiding," Hope said quietly, looking at the pictures in the dim light of the prison lamp. "The whole town knows." "It happens a lot." Tanya sat next to her, shoulder to shoulder. In 4 months of living together in a cramped cell, they had grown closer than one might expect. When people think the deceived party will never find out, they lose caution. "We're lucky they put us together," Hope said softly. "I don't know how I would have done it without you." "Likewise," Tanya replied simply. "It's good to have someone normal around in this shit." Hope ran her finger over Lamont's face in the photograph. The man she'd once loved, the man she'd once trusted with her life, the one who promised to be there for her in both sorrow and joy, the one who abandoned her at the worst possible moment, choosing her mother instead. "I keep thinking about that night," Hope said, putting the pictures aside. "He knew I'd be coming back late, knew the neighborhood was dangerous, promised to meet me." She clenched her fists. What if he didn't show up on purpose? What if he hoped something would happen to me? Tanya shook her head thoughtfully. "I don't think he wished that on you. Most likely, he just ignored the promise because he was too busy with your mother." "But the result is the same," Hope grinned bitterly. "I'm in jail, and they're together." "And how long ago would you say your mother said this started?" "Almost a year ago." Hope closed her eyes, remembering Shavonda's confession. She said he came over to fix the sink. They'd been drinking, and it just happened. Tanya snorted. Classic excuse. It just happened on its own. As if they'd both suddenly tripped and fallen into bed. Hope smiled involuntarily. Tanya always knew how to find the right words to diffuse the hardest moments. Behind her crude humor was a real support that Hope had learned to appreciate. "You know," Tanya continued, "I've been thinking. You've got 6 years and 8 months left to serve. They'll come to see you on dates, and then they'll come home and live their happy lives. Maybe even get married. They'll sleep in your bed, eat off your plate, all these years while you rot here." She looked at Hope carefully. "Can you live with that?" Hope remained silent. They both knew the answer. "I'm done," she said quietly, pulling a shiv from under the mattress. The metal gleamed dully in the semi-darkness. In the weeks since, the ordinary tablespoon had become a deadly weapon, razor sharp, with a comfortable handle wrapped in a strip of cloth. Tanya took the shiv, tested the point with her fingertip, and nodded approvingly. "Perfect. You've done a good job." "What should I do next?" Hope asked, taking the weapon and stashing it back. "Request a date with your husband." Tanya spoke calmly, as if she were discussing a plan to go to the store. "Say you want to talk about the divorce. It'll seem natural after everything that's happened." "And then?" "Then you'll have to sneak the shiv into the visiting room, Tanya thought for a moment. They checked the inmates before entering, but not too thoroughly, especially the women. You could hide it in your hair or in your clothes. And if they find it? Say you were afraid for your safety. You'll get a few days in the SHU, no more. Tanya shrugged. But they won't find you if you're careful. Hope spent the next few days preparing. Tanya showed her the best way to hide the shiv, in a specially made pocket under the lining of her prison uniform. They practiced movements so Hope could quickly draw the weapon in one smooth gesture. Aim for the neck or the stomach, Tanya instructed. Neck is more effective, but more blood. The stomach is less bloody, but not always fatal. It's up to you. Hope listened to these instructions with cold calm. 4 months ago, she would have been horrified by such talk. Now they seemed natural, necessary. Don't hesitate. Tanya put her hand on her shoulder. The moment you make up your mind, act without hesitation. One moment's hesitation can ruin everything. I won't hesitate, Hope replied quietly. She submitted a request to see her husband, citing the reason for discussing the divorce. The administration approved the meeting for the following week. Tanya helped her prepare thoroughly, mentally, and physically. Try to carry on the conversation as usual, she advised. Don't show your intentions ahead of time. Let him relax, make him feel safe. The night before their date, they sat on Hope's bunk, talking quietly. Are you ready? Tanya asked. Yes, Hope nodded. It's strange, but I'm completely calm. That's good. Tanya squeezed her hand reassuringly. Remember, whatever happens tomorrow, I'm with you. I'll be waiting for you here. Thank you. Hope looked at her friend gratefully. For everything. I don't know what I'd do without you. Hey. Tanya smiled slightly. There's no goodbyes. You'll do what you have to do and come back, just from the other side of the hallway. That night, Hope slept surprisingly well. No nightmares, no doubts, just a deep conviction that she had made the right decision. The morning passed like a blur. Shower, breakfast, back to her cell to prepare for her date. Hope carefully tucked the shiv into a hidden pocket. Tanya helped her make sure nothing gave away the presence of the weapon. It's going to be okay. Tanya said goodbye. I'll see you later. A security guard escorted Hope to the pre-date screening room. A cursory check revealed no hidden shiv. Hope's heart beat steady. Her hands didn't shake. She was strangely calm, as if she were watching from the sidelines. Lamont was already waiting behind the glass when she was led into the visiting room. He looked nervous, rubbing the collar of his shirt. Hope sat down across from him and picked up the phone, trying to look casual. Hi, she said. Hi, he swallowed. Thanks for agreeing to meet. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. We need to talk. Hope forced herself to smile. About the future. Yes, of course. Lamont visibly relaxed. I realize that after everything that's happened, he hesitated. I know I've hurt you, Hope. Hurt me? She said it almost without emotion. That's an interesting way of putting it. I didn't mean for things to turn out this way. He lowered his eyes. I really didn't. You didn't want to cheat on me with my mother? Hope watched him flinch at her words. Or didn't want me to find out? Hope, it's complicated. What's complicated, Lamont? She spoke calmly, almost kindly. Keeping your dick in your pants when my mother's around? He blushed. You don't understand. Between you and me, it's not just a fling. Oh, I understand perfectly. Hope nodded. I know it started long before I was arrested. That you were with her the night you promised to meet me. Lamont froze. How did you... A neighbor saw your car outside your mother's house, Hope replied. The whole town knows, Lamont. You haven't even tried to hide. He averted his eyes. I'm sorry, I should have told you sooner. Yes, you should have. She leaned forward slightly. Especially about the fact that you were dating before I was arrested. Tell me, Lamont, how did it start? He sighed. It's not that important. It is important to me, Hope insisted. I have a right to know. Okay. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. It really started when I came to fix her sink, almost a year ago. We got to talking, had a few drinks. He shrugged. One thing led to another. And then? Then we kept seeing each other, Lamont said softly. I know it's awful, Hope, but I couldn't stop. We fell in love. Hope felt something cold inside. Do you love my mother? I didn't plan it. He looked guilty and at the same time relieved, like the confession was taking the weight off him. It just happened. And that night? Hope asked quietly. When you promised to meet me? Lamont lowered his eyes. I was at her place. We were busy. I turned my phone off. I see. Hope nodded slowly. And when did you find out what happened to me? The next morning, his voice trembled. The police called me. And what did you and your mother think? We were shocked. Lamont looked up at her. Hope, I never wanted you to get hurt. Never. But I was hurt. Her hand moved slowly to the hidden pocket. I was there alone, Lamont. For an entire hour, She didn't finish the sentence. Hope, He looked really unhappy. I don't know what to say. It's my fault, and I'm going to live with it for the rest of my life. No, Hope said quietly, fumbling for the handle of the shiv. You won't. In one fluid motion, she drew the weapon and plunged it into Lamont's neck, aiming just below the jaw. He jerked, eyes bulging, grabbing at the glass partition, leaving bloody prints. Blood rushed from the wound, pouring down his shirt. The guards hadn't realized what was happening yet. Hope managed to land a second blow before a scream could be heard. Prisoner, drop your weapon! But she didn't hear it. She watched the life drain from Lamont's eyes as he slowly slid to the floor. In that moment, all she felt was calm, pure, absolute calm. The guards burst into the room, dropping her to the floor, pinning her hands behind her back. She didn't fight back. It was already over. Hope spent 3 weeks in solitary confinement. No books, no TV, just 4 walls and her own thoughts. She expected to be tormented by regret, fear, remorse. But there was none of that. Only the quiet satisfaction that justice had been served. When she was finally allowed a visitor, she was not surprised to see Shavanda behind the glass. Her mother looked 10 years older. Her eyes were swollen with tears. Her skin had taken on an unhealthy gray tint. Why? Was all Shavanda could squeeze out when she picked up the phone. You don't know? Hope answered calmly. He loved me, Shavanda said with pain in her voice. And I loved him. And I loved you both, Hope smiled without a trace of mirth. But you chose each other. You ruined my life, Shavanda whispered. Do you realize what you've done? It's funny, Hope shook her head. I thought exactly the same thing when I heard about you and Lamont, about how you ruined my life. It's different, Shavanda raised her voice. We didn't kill anyone. Not directly, Hope agreed. But if Lamont had met me that night like he promised, I wouldn't have been walking through the park. I wouldn't have been raped. I wouldn't have hit that man. I wouldn't have ended up in jail. She pitched forward. So yes, Mom, you killed me, just slower. Shavanda recoiled. You're crazy. Maybe, Hope shrugged. But now we're even. I'm never coming back, Shavanda said in a shaky voice. You're not my daughter anymore. And you were never my mother, Hope replied calmly. Goodbye, Shavanda. When her mother left, Hope sat staring at the space in front of her for a long time. She knew what awaited her. Another 25 years in prison, maybe more. But in a strange way, she felt freer than ever. As she walked back to her new cell, now in a maximum security cell block, she thought about Tanya, about what she'd said to her that last night. I'll see you later. Tanya understood. She understood that sometimes justice had to be taken into her own hands, even if it meant paying a heavy price. Hope had no regrets. No regrets. Hope spent 6 months in solitary confinement in a maximum security cell block. 6 months alone with herself, her thoughts and memories. Sometimes she remembered Lamont not the moment she'd plunged the shiv into his neck, but earlier times when they'd been happy. Those memories no longer caused pain, only a slight sadness for what might have been. One day, the cell door opened, and the guard announced that she was being moved back to the general cell block. After all the hearings and proceedings, she had 18 years added to her sentence. 25 years in total. A figure that should have been terrifying, but Hope accepted it with a strange calm. When she entered her old cell, Tanya was sitting on her bunk, reading a tattered book. Looking up, she smiled. a rare, genuine smile that transformed her usually stern face. Without a word, she stood up and hugged Hope tightly. The hug lasted a long time. Not just a greeting, but an affirmation of their bond, the warmth of human contact that Hope had missed all those months alone. "Welcome back," Tanya finally said quietly, not letting her go. "It's good to be back." Hope felt the tension of the last few months begin to let go. Here, in this cramped cell with this woman, she felt safe. That evening, when the cell lights were dimmed, they lay on Tanya's bunk, pressed tightly together. Hope rested her head on her friend's shoulder, feeling the warmth of her body, listening to her steady breathing. They talked for a long time about what had happened, about the trial, about Shivanda's reaction, about life in the high-security unit. "I've been thinking about you," Tanya admitted, running her fingers through Hope's hair. "Worried how you were doing. I made it through." Hope snuggled closer. "Turns out, I can be alone with myself, but I missed you. How much did you end up getting?" 25. Tanya whistled. "That's a tough judge. How long do you have left?" Hope asked. Tanya did the math. 9 years and 11 months. "If I'm lucky enough to get parole, I might be out in 8. Hope did a quick math. "So you'll be out in 2033. And me, if I'm lucky enough to get parole, in 2033, plus a couple more months." "So we're almost together," Tanya grinned. "I'll be out about a week early. I'll be waiting for you at the gate. Will you?" Hope lifted herself up to look into her eyes. "I promise," Tanya replied seriously. "Where else would you go? Your husband is dead. Your mother hates you. The house is probably sold." She was quiet for a moment. "And I, if I'm lucky, will have time to get my share of the property from the asshole husband. His parents are rich. They have their own company. There was a lawsuit after the murder, but I'm still entitled to a share. My lawyer's an asshole, but even he says there's a chance." "You never told me about this," Hope wondered. "What's the point?" Tanya shrugged. "I didn't believe I'd ever get out of here. But now I think there might still be life ahead of me." They both realized that 8 or 9 years was an eternity, that a lot could change in that time. But the very thought that there was light at the end of the tunnel, that there was someone waiting, that thought was warming. The years passed. Prison life fell into a rhythm, became routine. Hope and Tanya stuck together, helped each other survive in this cruel world. Sometimes they talked about the future, cautiously, as if afraid of scaring away good luck, about what they would do when they got out, where they would go, how they would start all over again. Tanya did get her share of the inheritance after much litigation, not as much as she could have, but enough to provide them both with a fresh start. And so, on a sunny April morning in 2033, Tanya Muniz stepped outside the gates of the Red Lodge Women's Correctional Facility. The first thing she did on her freedom, bought herself new clothes, went to a beauty salon, rented a room in a decent hotel, and slept in a real bed. And then, with the money left from the inheritance, bought a used but still luxurious black Cadillac. Exactly 8 days later, she parked it at the prison gate and waited. Her heart was beating fast and her palms were sweating. What if Hope changed her mind? If he didn't want to see her? What if she decided to start her life over, without reminders of the past? But then, the gate opened, and Hope stepped out with a small bag in her hand, squinting against the bright sun. She stood for a few seconds, as if not knowing where to go, and then she saw the car. She saw Tanya leaning against the hood. A smile lit up her face. She walked quickly, almost ran to the Cadillac. They hugged again, tightly, as if they were afraid one of them would disappear. "You really came," Hope whispered. "I promised." Tanya pulled away, eyeing her. "Ready to start a new life?" "More than ready." Hope looked back at the prison one last time. "Where are we going?" Tanya opened the car door. "Wherever you want to go. We've got money, we've got a car, and the whole world ahead of us. How about the ocean for starters? I've almost forgotten what it looks like." Hope climbed into the passenger seat. "The ocean sounds perfect." They pulled onto the highway, and Tanya stepped on the gas pedal. The prison was behind them, dissolving into dust clouds. Ahead lay the road, long, free, full of possibilities. "You know," Hope said, looking out at the passing scenery, "I don't regret anything. Me neither. Tanya glanced at her briefly and smiled. Not a thing. The car raced forward, taking them to the new life they had earned. Their pain, their resilience, their loyalty to each other. A life where no one else could betray them.